Hey everybody, this is Elizabeth Salazar with Get Visible Marketing, and I'm so excited today because I get to interview Mariana Ruiz, and she's going to talk to us about how to create 40 pieces of content in an hour. And this is huge, so I'm super excited. So Mariana is a business coach. Mariana, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and maybe where this interest in creating content and getting so good at it comes from.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Mariana. I'm a business coach and I work primarily with mom entrepreneurs to help them to start their businesses. I work mostly with women who are just starting out. And one of the things, the reason I got so into content creation is because I am a nurse and I hate selling. So I felt that creating content was really in alignment with my values and my vision for my business because I really wanted it to be coming from a place of helping people and service. And I really don't like being salesy or any of that. In fact, like when my clients work with me, I always tell them, I will not proceed unless you're like 100% ready and all in. I don't like to be a pushy salesperson, and that just doesn't jive with me. Mm-hmm. So I found that by creating content and just helping people, that was the best way for me to attract people to me. And so I've just focused on that and helping people regardless of the result of whatever happens. And usually I mean, I've had new consistent clients in my business since I started. I officially launched in January, and by February I had a 5K month. But here's the caveat. I was putting consistent content out from November every single day, consistent. And like we had a tornado yesterday. My blog post still went out. My emails still went out. Like it's very ingrained in me now to just create content every day. Mm-hmm. And so I use a lot of systems for automation and stuff, which I'll show you in this, because I think that as a mom entrepreneur, especially, or like anyone who has a life outside of business, it can get so easy to get caught up in life and then not get out there. And so I found that happening to me a lot in my first business where I wasn't that consistent because I would just forget. And so that these systems that I've put into place in my new business have really helped me to stay consistent every time. So
good.
Yeah.
And that's really important. I mean, I see that a lot and even have struggled with that myself, that staying consistent with your content. So I'm excited to hear. So where should we start? Because I mean, there's creating 40 pieces and then there's some of the other stuff. So you tell me, where's a good place?
So let's start with like, before we get into the creating 40 pieces, I want to just make sure content creation is basically pointless unless you have a message that you're getting out to the world that is targeted to a specific customer or client. Okay. So and you talk about this too, because it's part of visibility, but your message and knowing who you're talking to is the most important thing. Like I can tell you all about content creation. You can create content every single day and nobody will be attracted to it unless it speaks to them. So that is the first fundamental piece. And then once you have that, you can go out and create all this content, and hopefully people listening already have that. And if not, work with a coach like Elizabeth or myself to like get this part down, because the targeting is so important. And that's where I see a lot of people struggling is they are not going deep enough on their ideal client. They're really just like putting information out there, but it's not speaking to anybody, like the stickiness of it,
Yep. Exactly. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that is a huge part. One, knowing who it is you're talking to, and two, making sure that the things you're saying to them are actually things that appeal to them versus sometimes it's easy to create content that appeals to you. And if you're not your ideal client, they're not going to listen. So
yes.
Very good. Okay. I think that's a great point to start with.
Yeah. And so like, do you want me to just go into the tips or?
Yeah, let's just keep moving.
Okay, great.
I'll just interrupt you and ask questions as I see them. So
okay, cool. So where we're gonna start is taking an old piece of content. I'm all about repurposing and making sure that your message gets spread out in multiple ways because it's not always like creating one piece of content that's so critical. It's marketing that one piece of content, right? So you might have one blog post or one video that you might have done, even a Facebook Live or a blab, and nobody will really be able to see it unless we market it and repurpose it in multiple different ways and like talk about it and refer people back to it. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with one piece of content. So if I prefer that this be a video because it's just way easier, but you could do it as like a blog post, right? So a blog post, take your blog post, an old blog post, and do a Facebook Live video on it, right? And so basically you're just rereading it, you're going over the same points all over again. And you can add a different flair, right? So in the blog post, you might have mentioned like 5 tips to a healthier you. And then in the video, you might like go off on a little tangent and talk a little bit more about a different tip, or kind of give more depth to that blog post by creating a video on it. So the first piece of the repurposing is taking the blog post and doing the Facebook Live. Then you can, right after you're done with the Facebook Live, it'll say save to phone. And then you slide over the little thing and say save to the phone. Once you've done that, you can upload that to YouTube. This whole process, and we're not going to make like a 20, 30 minute long video. Those times of making like long videos are kind of not a huge thing anymore, just because people's attention spans are so short. So take that video and upload it back up into YouTube. And that whole thing should take you about 15 minutes. So you now have put it in 2 places. Well, actually 3. You have your blog, you have the video, and now you have it on YouTube. And what you could do is embed that video right back into the blog. So that would give you a 4th. And then, is that cool? Can I move on to the next?
Yeah. And I guess what I think about is that you can either, definitely embed it or not. Like if you want to use the exact same content, I just want to emphasize to people, you can do that. You don't have to even connect them, because I was hearing a statistic this weekend on someone's podcast, and they were basically saying, like, don't be afraid to repurpose the same stuff, because your audience is, first of all, you may have somebody who joins your audience on a Tuesday and you created that on Monday and they never saw it, that Facebook Live, that whatever. So, don't feel weird about putting the same stuff out there and just tweaking it slightly. Like you're saying, going in more depth, changing the title of it with a slightly different focus, or, just honing in on one area, because it's a great way to, continue to reach your audience and not expecting everybody in your audience to see everything you put out.
Yeah. And I think too, like if you have a central message that you're focusing your content around, a lot of your message is going to be the same over and over. And people need that repetition to like fully understand what you're saying, and to hear it in different ways actually helps your clients and your potential clients.
And let's take a couple steps back. So before people are creating content, because I think that we're assuming that people just already know what their content is and they're putting it out there. But is there, I know in a training you did last week, you said like choose 5 themes. And I really like that, because, I like giving people that kind of structure that says, you don't have to talk about everything, and you shouldn't be talking about everything, because ultimately everybody should be really honed in on something you want to be known for, what you're an expert at. When people are recommending someone, you want your name to come to mind for something specific, not everything building, or everything, not building, business or marketing or, copywriting. So let's take a couple steps back and kind of talk about how we can get more specific in the content that we're creating and kind of structure that.
Sure. So what I think of is like your central message is like a bullseye. And so I'll take my example, right? So I free moms from the 9-to-5 struggle. So that is my core message. Everything that I do revolves around helping moms to ditch their 9-to-5 and start a business, right? Okay. So that's the central message. And then outside of that are layers. And I think of it like a bullseye, like how it has the little colors, like almost like the spokes on a bicycle wheel. Yeah. And each of those spokes will be like 5. Okay. 5 different spokes out of it. And like, though, I don't even know if that's the word spokes, but anyway, you know what I mean? So, each of those are the 5 themes. And so the 5 themes that you're going to base your content around, hi Monique, are going to help you to be more targeted and to really get that message out there. And the spokes could be like things that, like you're saying, broad topics, but not too broad, that are going to help you to get that message across. And so, for example, mine are like, I talk a lot about tech stuff because these minor little technical glitches can really trip us up when we're starting a business. I talk about marketing. I talk about mindset because I really love action, right? But I think action starts with your mindset. And so, like, those are the different examples of themes that you could create your content around. And from there, you can go on and create content that is like centered around your message. Does that make sense?
It does. So basically what you're saying is you have your main theme, which is that you help moms to break out of the 9 to 5. And then you have these 5 areas that are basically your umbrella of content. Yeah. Whenever you're thinking what kind of content I'm going to make, it always falls under one of those 5. I mean, you could tweak it as you're going, but
yeah,
for the most part, you're not writing about anything else. You're not trying to show up under anything else.
No.
Okay.
And the other thing I think is important is that the themes be sort of narrowed, right? Like, so I'm talking about mindset in business. I'm not going to be talking about, mindset in parenting or mindset, even though I help mom entrepreneurs, right? Mm-hmm. So everything is kind of related, but kind of tightly fits together.
Okay.
And I feel like what I then do is a lot of the ideas for my content creation come from questions of people that ask me stuff. So like, How do you do this? Okay, well, does it fit under one of these themes? Okay, great. That's a whole week of content. So I have a very specific, like out of the 5 themes, I'll rotate them. I'll do 1 theme per week.
Okay.
And I feel that allows me to give a in-depth like overview on whatever the topic is under that theme. So let's say I have a question on creating content. I spent a whole week talking about creating content. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll translate that into a challenge, like I have done that in the past. And sometimes I'll do it as free content. I'm not like, some people are like, well, don't give away too much content. This is one of the most common questions I get. Don't give away too much content because then you're not going to leave room for people to buy your products and buy your stuff. And I can tell you, like, the exact opposite is true. I'm never afraid of giving too much content. I think that you can be overly generous and it will come back to you like 20 times fold. I don't think that there's necessarily a need to like hold back on what you're giving.
Yep, I completely agree. And, a great example of that right now is people doing webinars.
Yeah.
And so often, you just get this, like they have this big promise and then you watch the webinar and you're like, I don't know about that. But one person who's doing it really awesome right now is Bushra. She's getting ready to launch a course. And I think I've seen you in there too. And I mean, I'm like analyzing, how is she doing this? Because she's good. But I mean, her webinar this week was like 2 hours long.
Yeah. And I watched the whole thing.
Yeah, I did too. I did do it on 1.25 speed, but it was just like everything she was saying was fantastic. Some of it, I mean, I already knew, but it was just neat to hear it all over again and hear her twist and her angle on how she's been successful doing it. And that's what people want to hear. They want to hear, how have you been successful? And, there's so many people out there that tell you like, do this, don't do that. And Bushra goes above and beyond with providing content. And on her training this week, she even made sure to say like, don't get the wrong idea. This is just me touching the iceberg. In the course I'm going to offer in a couple of weeks, I'm going to show you exactly this. And she talked about, but, so often I think people are afraid, like, I don't want to give it all away. And, but ultimately, no matter what you sell, you're selling a process, you're selling being able to get it done quicker. You're selling them something different than just the information in general.
Yeah. And you're selling a little piece of you, right? Like, and I hate that sounds bad, but you know what I mean? Like your twist on it, like you said, but also like a lot of times it's, access to you is worth way more money than just doing it themselves in a course. Even if it's all automated, even if it's like an automated funnel where you're emailing them like a success coach, right? Like emails that are going to help them through the process. That's you. Like they can't get that from anywhere else.
Yep.
And so at the end of the day, you really cannot give way too much. You can't. And like you said, though, it's a good point. Like if you are doing a selling webinar, to say this is only the tip of the iceberg, or to explain like, you know, we're going to go in much more depth, right? Like, don't worry. There's way more than this.
And when people worry about like, who am I, or, you know, not being themselves, I hear a lot of people like talking about authenticity, and, you know, to me, that's just not even a big deal. Like, as long as you're showing up, and like, people are going to see who you are and how you deliver. Because sometimes you think to yourself, like, what's different about me? And, you know, how you approach content and how you approach everything in your business is really, you know, for those of you who have thought that, like, that's what's different about you. Like, I love to get on video and do this kind of stuff. And so, you know, whatever it is, but no matter how you run your business, people will see what's unique about you through your content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't need to be said. Usually it's implied, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Because that'd be weird. Let me tell you the 5 things that are unique about me.
Yeah, and I mean, that's okay. Like, I've seen people do videos like that, which is great. But if you are not feeling like you haven't even identified those, or you aren't feeling comfortable making a video like that, that's okay too. Yeah. Like, what's unique about you will shine through, and other people will. Like, I'm in a group with my coach, Lacey Craig, and she is doing some incredible work. She's doing something called the Lit Up Partnership. And so she is asking people to do these videos of like saying your worth and like what you're good at. And what surprised me is in almost all the videos, when I've watched them of my peers or my colleagues, I've seen that there's stuff that they're saying that they're good at, which they are good at, but I'm seeing other stuff that they're great at that they don't mention. And so a lot of times you don't even know what your strengths are and what you're good at, and other people can see those things in you.
It's true. And I don't think that we live in a society where, even in the online world, where we're going out there and telling people. And, you know, when you're in that type of a group, it makes it a little bit more of a safer zone where you know them a little bit better, and you can say, hey, you know, you mentioned these things, but you're missing. But, you know, we just don't even do that. And it's too bad, because what is the greatest compliment someone could give you than coming along and telling you, like, here's something you're amazing at, and you don't even realize it, I don't think. And
yeah, and I think I think that's the power of working with a coach, because sometimes we don't even know the angle of our perfect message, right? Like, we're so good at what we're good at that we don't even see that it happens, right? Like, you're just like, that's just my natural thing, right?
Exactly.
And so, you know, working with a coach or with somebody in a mastermind, like, that's when you're going to be able to get those kind of things, and you're going to see your own strengths, because they'll reflect it to you and tell you.
I agree. So cool. So we talked about the bullseye. We talked about the 5 points that go around it. Is there anything else we need to know before we start creating all the content?
I think have a system that works for you. Like, I have a system that I follow on Trello, and I have a very specific way that I organize everything, and where I put the content, and how I know what's been put where, right? Okay. So I'm not posting the exact post multiple times in different places. Right. But I have a system to do it. So I would recommend have a system that works for you. I know people that work out of a Google Doc or Evernote. I love Trello. That's the way that I think. So have a system that works for you, but have something centralized outside of social media, because it can be really hard if you're going to like have to go search your Facebook page and like find that video and download it. And, you know, so have something outside of social media where you keep all of it, everything organized.
Well, and even thinking about it like that, like, I created this one piece of content. Where am I going to save this so I know this is a main piece that I want to kind of branch out from? Because once you post it, I would say that this is one of the biggest things I am planning on outsourcing, is I have to hire somebody just to go back and find all my old content and plug it in. Because, you know, I was listening to a podcast this weekend on Meet Edgar, And that's something I'm planning on getting. But it's basically, that same thing you're talking about, creating a system, plugging it in, let it be done automatically for you. And I'm like, oh, yes, please, versus, doing it the tedious way and, kind of keeping more track on it. So
yeah, and I have used Me Edgar in the past. I wasn't getting a ton of engagement when I was doing it. So I do outsource. Like I put all of my posts on Trello, and my VA, I just batch write them all on Sundays, and my VA posts them all week for me everywhere that I need her to post them.
Okay.
So I do outsource it, and I have had a VA that I hired specifically for data mining and just like finding all of my old content, because I had a year's worth of content in my previous business that I wanted to bring over into my new business as much as I could, right? Like I was doing health and fitness coaching through an MLM. So I did have some stuff that was very applicable to business building. But then I had a lot of health and fitness stuff that didn't apply. So I did have somebody go through and do that and like create some images for me based on the old stuff with my new branding. So just like kind of had somebody do that special project. And I think that that is totally worth it, because that's hours and hours that you've already put in, and then you don't want to put more time into doing that. But yeah.
Well, I think that's a great point. just saying, don't be afraid to hire someone to go back and do this for you.
And it doesn't have to be hugely expensive. I used, it was Elance, yeah, but now it's Upworks. And I hired a woman in India for about $3 an hour. And it was just this one special project, and for her and her family, it was around Christmas time. She was so grateful. She just was, it worked out for both of us. So again, like it, for mom entrepreneurs, I know, especially, they're like, I can't hire a VA. It doesn't have to be $30 an hour. It can be, a lot less than that. So
I'm glad you say that too, because I hear a lot of people, almost the virtual assistants I see in the groups that we're in, they almost kind of guilt you, like, how dare you use somebody that's not a professional and who isn't, $30 an hour, they're not charging their worth, you're not going to get anything. But you can go and hire great people to do one-off type projects that are really going to help move your business. And I mean, sometimes organizing and structure is a huge part to just moving your business forward on a consistent basis. And so I'm glad you say that and you've kind of talked about your experience, because I'm going through a course now where it's teaching you, like, here's how you do all this on a regular basis. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of, and again, it's from the people who are doing it, but it's not well received. Like, no, don't hire somebody for $3 an hour or $4 an hour, or, something that's actually doable when you're first getting started.
Oh, yeah. I went through all of Chalene Johnson's stuff. Like that's, one of my mentors, and from a distance, I've never met her, but you know what I mean? I've done every program she's had, and that's one of the things she teaches. And it is like, I didn't think about it as like how it would impact that family. But when I had this happen, and my VA was so grateful, like it was during Christmas, like I said, and she was like, this is a huge help to me, and I really thank you for doing that. And I even gave her a bonus, I was like, here, take another $30. Like to me, it's not a huge thing, but to her, it was a huge thing.
Yeah.
And so, again, like think about what it's like for them on the other side. And I'm from Venezuela, I'm from a different country. And I can tell you right now, like, back when I, was living there, this is a really good salary, right? Like even a small amount to us is a great salary to them. And it takes them way farther than what the average salary is. So again, like I don't feel any guilt around that. And it's not like, yes, there is a language barrier. I will say that. Like, yes, there is a language barrier, but you're asking them to bring out your stuff you've already made. Right. Yeah. So it depends also like the type of work. Be conscious about what type of work you're having them do. You're not going to have them write your blog post, but you can have them transcribe something for you. It's already done. Right. So think of that. Right.
Yeah. And before we get any haters on like, we're just trying to do, not pay anything. There's definitely a place, and I'm sure you would agree with this, where you hire somebody from the U.S. who has higher qualifications and can do things at a more advanced level.
Yeah,
but there's other things that you can outsource at a much lower rate that, people in the US, I mean, they would do it, but other people are going to do it too. So.
Yeah. And I have a whole team. Like I have a programmer, I have another VA. Like it's not like I'm trying to get the cheapest thing at all, right? But it's about allocating the right tasks to the right person. And that's how you become a really smart CEO of your business.
I like it.
Yeah.
So what are your systems? I mean, you said you batch create on Sundays and then you kind of hand it off to your virtual assistant. So tell us a little bit about what your system looks like and how long you spend on creating content a week, where all that content is going, and maybe what you do versus what you hand off and then what you ultimately have someone else do.
So what I do is like the actual creation of the content. So I'll write my blog post, I'll write my social media post, but how I write my social media post, which is like the next piece of how you're going to create this content so quickly, I just take that original blog post or video and like, let's say I cover 5 tips. Well, each of those 5 tips then becomes one social media post. And then I'll take something fun, throw that in there on the same topic, right? But we're still on the same topic because I cover the same topic all week. And then I'll take something engaging, like a question. I'll throw that in there. And then I'll take something that is like personal to me and I'll throw that in there. Okay. And then any tangents that I'm wanting to take on the blog post itself, I'll write those down because I actually write my blog posts in Trello. So I'll just like write them down in a new note and be like, this is an area I'm wanting to go off into. It's a tangent. It's not necessarily going to go in this blog post, but I want to do a different post on it. And might even take that and turn that into another blog post, but definitely another social media post, because I think when we have these tangents, we have to listen to ourselves and create that content. I think that a lot of value comes from that. It's listening not only to your intuition and where you want to go, but like expressing your message. And I think a lot of times it's stuff that people need to hear.
Okay.
So
I like that.
Yeah. And so I'll take those. Then I'll write my newsletter, which is usually a little bit more depth again. I'll just take the blog post and maybe tell a backstory of how this happened.
Okay.
Maybe I had one on confidence a couple of weeks ago, and I literally shared my journey and struggling with confidence since I was a kid. Like, not, I didn't say like a whole story on it, but I did say a backstory. Like, this is something I struggled with, and that's why I wanted to get this message out to you. Here's the blog post, right? So my newsletter people do get a little bit more depth on my story, or maybe a backstory or something else to add to it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you start out with a video or a blog, and then you break that into your social media posts, and you're kind of talking about the different elements that you add in, and then you take it over to your newsletter. And I like that you mentioned specifically, like, you just give them more detail about you, because you make your newsletter more personal and more, sometimes social media and even a blog, you just want to get right to the point. But I like that. Okay. So what do you do? Do you have something else after your newsletter?
No, so after all that is created, I have it on Trello, and my VA takes care of the rest, which is actually posting it on social media for me at the appropriate time. Hang on, my daughter is crying. Hold on 1 second.
Aww. And if you guys have any questions, those of you who are watching live, definitely put them in the comments, and we will answer those as we go. So I know that Mariana had to...
Hi. Okay. So anyways, then the rest of it, my VA will handle the rest, and she'll just actually post it on social media for me, because I have 2 kids under 2. Here's one of them. So I do forget to post. Like, that was one of the reasons I had to get a team member. And, my first hire was a VA that I hired part-time.
Okay. And when you say she posts on Facebook for you, I've heard, like Shalene Johnson's talked about this, where she has her assistant have like the exact same name, same picture, everything, so that things show up and it looks like her profile. How do you do that?
So I'm not that safe about it. I trust my VA like with my life. So I give her all of my logins.
Okay.
We do use 1Password sometimes. I'm not the best at doing it. But I had every intention to use one password every single time, just like Shalene said. I do have the software, but again, like yesterday we had a tornado and I don't normally have her do my newsletters, which having the tornado really showed me like, okay, I need to have her doing my newsletter because I could just write my newsletter and she could put it in for me.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of times it's this kind of stuff that happens where I'm like, how the heck am I going to get this out there? Because I'm in an emergency situation. And then I'm like, okay, I need to outsource this as well. Like I have the staff, I just need to tell them and give them a process. I'm also very regimented as far as like giving them a process. I've had bad experiences with VAs and it was completely my fault because I would just say, go write my newsletter for me. Here's the info, right? Where now with my VAs, what I do is take like a slightly corporate style, but it's what are the policies and procedures? Okay, first you're going to log into Facebook. Then you're going to, copy from Trello the words. You're going to copy this image that I've already created, and then you're going to post it into this group, this group, this group, right? So giving them like a detailed outline so that like they don't miss a step. It also helps them, but also it helps you because you know that it's going to be done correctly. This is really good for the people that are like not wanting to give up control, which is me.
Well, and who aren't sure because, you make a good point of like, it was my fault. And I think sometimes it's easy to be like, no, they just didn't know what they were doing when, we know our businesses inside and out. And so to delegate something as sensitive as content and what ultimately, builds our business.
Represents you.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And I think too, like, we are taking for granted if we don't do a step-by-step that they know everything.
Right.
And it's pretty much impossible because they may have never used the same email autoresponder as you. Even if they've been a VA for 20 people, they might have used 20 different email autoresponders. Yeah. So, we're making a big assumption by just saying, hey, do this for me.
Yep. Okay. So about how long does it take you each week to create your content?
About, I would say like an hour and a half to 2 hours max.
Okay, so an hour to 2 hours.
But that's because my blog post, I like to write, like, I really like to get into my writing on my blog post. That's my favorite part.
And so an hour and a half to 2 hours, you have a blog post. How many social media updates?
Oh boy, at least probably 20 to 30.
Okay, so you have one blog post for the week, 20 to 30 Facebook status updates, and you have a newsletter to go out for the week.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
pretty good.
And I do Instagram. Okay. Yeah, and I do Instagram. So Instagram, I'll do it like a shorter recap.
Okay, and are you creating your own images or you're just writing the words and somebody else is doing the rest?
I just, I have like templates that I use. This is a huge helper too for Shortcut. It helps your branding and it helps to create content quickly. It's just use a template. Like you don't need to recreate the wheel every time you go and write a quote.
That's a great
thing. And yeah. And for the quotes, I don't go and find, because I could spend hours going to find really great quotes. I'm doing I'm doing reading of books and personal development every single day. So I have great quotes in my head that as I'm listening to a podcast and I'm like, that was incredible, write it down for myself. And then I'll keep those in a board on Trello. And I'm like, oh man, what about this topic? And then I'll look through there and they're already there.
I like that.
So this saves you a ton of time trying to find the perfect inspirational quote for your topic.
Yeah. And I've been guilty of that where I'm like, how can it take hours to try and find a pretty, image and all this stuff? But I like that tip because it's, have a theme. And I've seen yours, they all follow a very similar pattern, which is great for branding. And you don't have to rethink it every time. So, and I like that you're already, and me too, I'm already out there reading personal development books. I'm already listening to podcasts. So just gathering all that stuff up and making it a part of your system, plugging it in somewhere that will allow you to reuse it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, and then just the templates, I keep them on Canva and just plug them in. I have probably 5 or 6 different templates that I work with and do them that way.
Cool. Okay, so we've gone into like what we need ahead of time. We've talked about, what your system looks like and how much time you spend ahead of time. Let's get into the actual creating of content. And we kind of were started on this earlier, but let's go down that path again.
Okay, so we're going to take an old blog post, and if you don't have a blog, you can take an old long Facebook post where you gave maybe multiple tips, 3 to 5 tips.
Okay.
And then you're going to read that and create a Facebook Live video. And then you can save that onto your phone right at the end and upload that to YouTube. That whole process should take you about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Then what we can do is, here, I have my notes. You're going to batch produce the quote cards. So each of those little tips will go onto a different card.
Okay. What do you mean?
A different.
Oh, on Trello.
A picture.
Okay.
So like go into Canva and create a document with your, different templates, maybe like 3 or 4, 5 different templates that you're going to use. And then just write the tips on there. And I mean, what you want out of an image, I feel, is you want to capture the main message you're trying to get across and kind of represent what you're going to say in the post. Yes, you're going to go into detail in writing, but people should know when they see the image, do I want to continue to read on this topic?
Okay, so where do you get your images? Because sometimes that's a lot of work and sometimes a little bit complicated to get an image with the theme.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Like I use a template that I always create.
Oh, okay.
Like I always use the same.
I see. Images. And again, because you have 5 topics, you basically have 5 images that could go with one of those topics.
Yeah, like the images that I use are not, I don't know if I have even an example. I don't like create a brand new image for each topic.
Okay.
I'll just have like moms in the background. I'll have like a picture of me with my kid.
Okay.
I'll have, so the image is going to encapture your main message. Mm-hmm. And so that's always going to stay the same. There's no need to come up with a brand new image every time. And that's the part that I think will save you so much time.
Yeah.
And I call the mom entrepreneurs I work with super mom. So I have one where it's like a lady, if it's something really empowering, it's like the super mom lady with a cape.
Okay. I think I've seen that one.
It sounds totally cheesy, but, and then I have my brand colors and I just kind of gloss over that on top of my image.
Okay.
So it's very clear when you see my stuff that it's my stuff. It's like this crazy pink color and it's very noticeable because I always do them the same.
Okay. Perfect.
And like I've seen other people, and I think Joy Martinez, I don't know if you know her and you follow her from Strengths DNA. Mm-hmm. She does a really great job and she uses like maybe a handful of pictures, and none of them have pictures in them, but it's just really beautifully graphically designed. Her sister's a designer, a graphic designer, and she just designed these templates for her. And almost all her images look the same. It's just different text. So that's, again, like when you're creating images, think about it being like clean and having it be recognizable for you. And people will know it's you before they even read anything.
Okay.
So that's the next piece. I'll just write each of the tips as a different little tidbit on there. I might quote either myself from the blog post, or if it's an interview, I'll quote the person I interviewed. If it's a guest post, I'll quote them as well. And I take all of those.
Wait, before you move on here. So you're saying that if you interviewed somebody, like I'm interviewing you, you would then go and post that content like with the tips as though you're quoting them? Because to me, like I've always kind of worried like, oh, people will think that I'm saying this is my expertise when in reality, this is someone else. So how do you approach that?
Oh yeah, so I have guest posts and I do a lot of interviews. I think that doing this, and Elizabeth you'll probably agree with this, but it gives you a lot of visibility and it helps you to collaborate and join forces, like as far as getting together and getting someone else's audience in the game with yours, right?
And it keeps you accountable. Like, I have to show up every week.
Totally. So yes, what I do is I'll write a quote and cite them. I don't say that that's me.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, I did this great interview with Elizabeth and she said XYZ. Here's what my take is on this. Or like, here's a little bit more depth, or this is how I apply this in my business. Robin did a great guest post for me on Instagram for lead generation. And so I took her quotes, and those were all posts that I ended up putting on Facebook. And they were like, Robin told me to do this. I've grown my following by 400 people by doing this. It was like 15 minutes a day or something like that. I'm sure your people have heard her stuff.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And so I'll say that. I'll say, like, because of what, she said to do, go here and read the whole post, right? Or you can either direct them back to your blog if you want to, or you can just say, go to her group, like promote her, right? Yeah. And tag her, and then her people will see you, right? So again, this is all going to work to get you more visible as well.
Yeah.
More visibility, more exposure, but totally citing them. Do not, take it as your own.
Exactly.
But do give your own personal touch, right? Like, what do you gain from it? Or why do you feel that it's important?
I like that. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. So those are the images. I'll create I think if you have an hour's time, you can create about 10 of these. If you have them already, like I said, done on Canva, all you have to do is change the text. And the hardest part of that whole thing is really capturing what you want to say and each of the tips. And then I'll start with, when I start to write the actual post, I'll take those tips and I'll just, I don't exactly copy and paste. I'll just take the tip and give a different angle.
Okay.
So like, let's say the tip is create more content to be more visible. Well, I'll take that tip and create it into a new post for social media. And I'll say, did you know that by creating content, you can be more visible? Here's how this works. And maybe like go a little bit more in depth, or, take a different angle.
Yep.
Basically.
Okay.
And so I write those out. That takes me about 20 minutes because usually I batch this with my blog post creation. So everything's already top of mind. When you sit down and do it all at once, you're not having to restart at zero every time that you sit down to post.
Well, and get back in the mindset of it. You're like, oh, I was making dinner, but now I have to do this again. And it's sometimes difficult to do that transition.
Yes. And then, okay, so then how do you get the most out of this? What you can do is there's an app called If This Then That. And what I do is I put a specific, every time that I post on Instagram or Facebook, it'll make a pin out of it.
Okay.
And I'll also have it automatically tweet for me.
Nice.
So I don't exactly have a presence on Twitter. I'm not that good at Twitter, but I am there because I'm tweeting my blog post and my stuff does get shared. Like I do have movement there, but I'm not putting like a whole bunch of effort into Twitter.
Yeah. It's just not a primary place for you.
Yeah. It's not a primary place for me. And then you can also do that with your, you can have it say from YouTube. Anytime you post a video on YouTube, you're going to have it do a pin for you and you're going to have it do a tweet.
Okay.
So those are the three main places I'm at, is Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And then those automatically will upload to the other ones.
So when we're thinking about 40 pieces of content, help us see where those all come from. Because you just mentioned like blog and then how you turn it in. Let's break those numbers down, because I get the impression that some of those like pins and tweets that are happening automatically are part of that number, right?
Yes, they are. And so the original blog post is already done. So we're not counting that. Okay. And so we're going to say your Facebook live stream and your YouTube, you're going to upload it to YouTube. So that's 2. And then you're going to produce 10 images, and then you're going to produce 10 written posts that are going to go with it.
Okay.
And actually, if you end up posting them on Facebook and on Instagram, you'll have more than 10, but 10 pieces there. And then you're going to auto schedule it from if this, then that. So we're already at 23 pieces, and then you auto post from if this, then that, and you get way more than 40.
Okay. I like that. So, you're really conscientiously making one blog post, and then you're doing, you have a system in place to have images that are branded. You're pulling out a quote, and then you're writing something around that. And so, I mean, what I like about this, Mariana, is it doesn't sound complicated. Creating 40 pieces of content an hour, to me, I'm like, oh gosh, that sounds like I could spend an hour just thinking about one piece of content or like avoiding it, And so I like how simple it is, where you just need to have one thing you're talking about, be inspired by one thing, and then breaking it
and go off with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that the way that I manage that is, I plan out all of my content. So I have over 6 months worth of content already planned and ready to go.
Okay.
Ready to go, meaning I have a brief outline of what my blog post will be about.
Nice.
So what that I do is I have that in a calendar. I just have the topic. So like 2 weeks ago, I said I talked about confidence. I was thinking the whole week, because I have it on my calendar in my kitchen all week. I'm like, okay, how am I going to approach this confidence topic? Right.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of inspired also, because I hate to plan that much content and then be like, oh man, I don't like this topic. Right. Like if you're not coming from an inspired place, your content can kind of not feel good to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the inspiration by just having the topic up there and kind of the bullet points I want to talk about. And then all week I'm kind of like, what stories can I think about that match with this? A lot of times my toddler will do stuff that randomly will match what I want to talk about, or a topic that's coming up, and I'll see it on my calendar and I'll write that there.
Okay. Well, and when we break that down, because when you tell me like I have 6 months of content right now, that sounds like, whoa. But then when I think about there's 52 weeks in a year, so we divide that in half, 50, I don't know, like 26. So you would basically just need to come up with 25 topics.
Blog post topics.
Yeah, blog post topics with a few bullet points. And, when you think about like spending a day, I don't know, maybe not even a full day, but you just spend a couple of hours once every 6 months planning out, like, what are 25 things that I want to talk about in the next 6 months? Like, that seems more reasonable than that scary feeling of like, she has 6 months of content. Oh man. Versus 25.
Yeah, but versus 25 blog post topics, right?
Yeah.
And when I did a challenge on this, and I went through the whole process from like going from your themes to breaking it down to what you're going to cover every week. And my intention was for people to walk away with 3 months worth of content planned. And what ended up happening is some women had 2 years worth of content. Wow. And some of that will probably be pruned out later, or they might swap things around. Like, you're not married. It's your business.
Yeah.
You're the CEO. You're not married to doing this topic this week if you hate it, right? Or if something better comes up, or you get a really good question, do that. But, again, if you have the planning, it takes a lot less time. You can just save so much time and stay consistent.
Well, and that's a huge element. I mean, what you've said so far, and just kind of recap is, you're planning out 6 months in advance, 25 topics with just a few bullet points, not getting too crazy. So you have your themes, but those all fall under, you have one main core to your business, which is helping moms to break out of their 9-to-5 jobs. And then you have those 5 key elements that are the only things you talk about. So when you're sitting down 6 months out to come up with those 5 topics, you're able to just look at this and say, these are the things I talk about. What topics fall under this? And I mean, really, if we're going math wise, if you're going for 25 topics and you have 5 categories, well, I'm not that great at math actually. 5.
So 5. Yeah, that's 6 months. Yeah, 5 topics and 5 under each category. Mm-hmm.
So that again, I mean, I guess as we look at this entire process, I guess I want people to understand, this isn't just about creating 40 pieces of content in 1 hour. This is an entire system and process that she uses of how she thinks about her business, because then once you have all these things in place, that's when it becomes easy to just sit down in 1 hour and say, hey, I already have my topic outlined. I have these points. I knew to start thinking about it a week in advance. I was able to kind of put that spin on it. I was able to look at life. I can't tell you how many ideas I've had for like content based on Candy Crush. Oh my gosh. And I never write any of them down, but I could have an entire series on Candy Crush, how we relate to business. But I really like that because there are these very technical and simple ways you're talking about, blog post, this many Facebook posts, repurpose it in these using, platforms like If This Then That and automatic scheduling. But it all comes down to everything it takes as you lead up to it.
Yeah. And really, I think that the underlying premise of this whole thing is if you want a 6-figure business, try to run it like a CEO, right? Yeah. And plan, right? Like you wouldn't, I worked as a nurse and I worked in administration in a hospital, right? And we had a budget, we had policies and procedures, we had, a lot of things that it worked like a well-oiled machine for the reasons because it had those systems in place, it had the policies. Now, yes, we want to create flexibility. We want freedom from our business as well. That's why we're creating a business. But flying by the seat of your pants is not going to help you get there. And if you do, you're going to be so much more stressed out than if you were to just take 5 minutes in planning, right?
Yep. And that's
I love the quote.
That I see. Yeah. That's the biggest problem I see that people have is they approach marketing from a fly by the seat. And then when it doesn't work, they're like, oh, my business doesn't work. This sucks. Nothing works. And it's like, no, systems and planning really are what make businesses work. I'm sorry. Tell us what the quote was.
Yeah. So the quote is from Brian Tracy and it says, every minute spent in planning saves you 10 minutes in execution. So I love Brian Tracy. I'm a huge fan of his and I love goal setting and all of that. But I think that is so vital for moms. In the morning, just spend 5 minutes planning. How much time will that save you in the course of the entire day? And then the same comes through for business, right? Plan your content, take not even a day to plan out your, 5 topics under each theme. And it'll take you I had my people that went through the challenge. It took them, I said, set a timer for 20 minutes and just let your mind go. And then whatever ideas you want to run with those. And if you don't want to run with the other ones, don't. But you'll be, if you just give yourself the time, you'll be rewarded tenfold.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple of questions from Monique. One of them, she had asked, so you create content by listening to podcasts, reading books. Is that correct? Is that part of where you get some of your inspiration? I mean, that's not exactly what we were saying, but.
Yeah, so for the inspirational quotes, I might take something that I read. I just talked about Brian Tracy, right? I read a bunch of his books.
Yeah.
So it might be something like that, but all of most of my quotes actually come from content that I've made. So It sounds really stuck up, but I quote myself and I'll quote people that I'm interviewing.
Okay.
Because eventually you're trying to be your own brand, right? You have a message to get out into the world. And I think that by only quoting other people, we can't, be seen as the expert, right? You are the expert. You have a quote, you have a message to share with the world. Get it out there as your own.
I like that. Okay. Another question that Monique asked is, if you don't have a blog and you're just starting, and you just want to start writing, is there another option you can use until you get a blog?
Totally. If you do LinkedIn, you could do blogs on there. You could also do blogs on Facebook if you want to, but you don't have to do any of those things. If you just do a video, you could just do a video. My whole point of saying it's a blog post is because I usually cover 3 to 5 points in a blog post. And so that's why I usually say it's a blog post, but some people write Facebook posts that have 3 to 5 points in them. So run with that. You don't need to have, I think that is just the vehicle, and you don't need to have the same vehicle as anybody else. Just the structure of the system.
Exactly. Okay. Let me look through our notes here and see Let's see. So one of the things we touched on, and let me know if we touched on this, was the number one mistake that business owners make with their content and how to avoid it. What was the answer to that?
So the number one mistake
Did we talk about
people, so the number one mistake that people make with their content is not planning. So we did talk. Yeah, we did talk about that.
I would agree with you 100%. That is what I see.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. How to save hours every week on content creation while remaining visible and showing up as the authority, which would be the batching of content, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And then the other point we touched on was just repurposing content. And, you know, we touched on this earlier and how important it is to make sure you're reusing it and how you're only going to be getting a couple percent. If you have 1,000 people following you, probably only 20 people are going to see a piece of content. So it's okay to like reuse it over and over. So one of the questions I have on this is, so if you have these 25 topics and then you're breaking them down week by week, do you ever go back and talk about them again? Or are you always coming up with something new?
No, I go back and talk about them again, especially if I'm getting a lot of questions on a certain topic.
Okay.
Or I'm seeing it as a trend among my clients or my people in my group. Whatever I'm seeing is needed, really. I do like to rebring those topics back up because again, not everybody's seen it, and you can do another, even if you have a blog and yes, they're there forever, you can go back and revisit those topics, do a different angle, expand on it. If it's a topic that did really well, right? Like again, even just changing, like you said, the headline. I've had blog posts that flopped and I changed the headline and it's like, boom, they're doing really good again. Yeah. So, you know, it's never a bad idea to revisit topics because I feel like you can always add new information to it. Okay.
You know, and as we're wrapping up here, I know one of the things you mentioned were like talking about some of the different softwares and programs and things you use. And, you know, I guess you've talked about them throughout, but if there's any extra ones you want to recommend, or let's just make sure we mention them all here at once too. So what do you use to kind of structure yourself and stay organized?
So I use Trello, and it's a project management app. That's really all I use.
Okay. Well, you said you use Canva.
Oh yes, I use Canva. I'm sorry.
And if this, then that.
If this, then that. And I do use CoSchedule inside of my blog posts to schedule out just like the notification about my blog. And I haven't noticed a huge decrease on that, but again, it's not as effective for me as real life posting.
Okay.
So the best automation is really if this and that after Facebook, right? Because Facebook is the one that's going to decrease you in the algorithm if it doesn't have enough engagement and all of this other stuff. So once I put it on Facebook, automatically posting it to the other places has been really good for me.
Okay. And one of the things, I mean, I just listened to this thing this weekend on Meet Edgar, and I was like, oh man, that sounds amazing. And a lot of it is creating these systems that kind of help you to basically what they do, if you haven't heard of them, is it's kind of like a Hootsuite or a Buffer, except they actually hold all of your content like a library, and then they just disperse it in categories as you're going along, so that you're always putting out content, and it's even repurposing and reusing content. And so, but you had said that you didn't really love it because it had affected your reach.
Yeah, on Facebook it did. Now I know that in marketing of Meet Edgar, they say it doesn't, but it did for me in my specific situation when I used it last year.
Okay.
So what I do is I keep everything on Trello, and Trello does not post for you. Let me just make that really clear. But you can keep everything there so that if you want to reuse it, you do. And I have my assistant go in and analyze the effectiveness of the post through engagement and, you know, like kind of what happened as a result. Did more people join my group? Did people join my email list? That kind of stuff. And then once she does that, I'll reuse the stuff that did well.
Yep, I think that's a great point. And the difference between these two is that you're doing it kind of manually, and you've set those systems up, and you have somebody that you're paying. And that was one of the things that they mentioned in this interview, is that, you know, Meet Edgar allows people who haven't been consistent to finally have that system for doing what you kind of do manually without hiring, because I'm sure you're paying somebody more than $50 a month to assist you in that process. And, I think what Edgar was talking about was, at least when they try and justify it not hurting your impact, is that because you're more consistent, you're going to be out there more often and have a chance to be in front of your audience. But since you already have that down pretty well, I could see where that might not be, like, you would be looking for that next level of, like, I actually have all the analytics on this. Let me analyze it. So,
yeah. And again, it's like being a CEO versus, like, instead of just repurposing what you think is going to do well, repurpose only the best stuff.
Yeah.
It's only going to make you better.
And that's a good point, because we talked about repurposing, but that's one of the things we'd want to mention in there is you want to know how many comments did I get, how many likes, and repurpose, the things that didn't do well with tweaking to see, did this work better the second time around?
Literally, it could be one line. Like, it could be. And I feel like, when you're starting off, it's normal. You're going to have 1 or 0 likes and comments. Don't worry. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Keep trying until you find something that works for you.
And sometimes I feel bad telling people that with marketing, like, really, it's trial and error. You have to keep testing it, because it could be, like you said, one word, or it could be phrasing it differently, or, sometimes it's just not what your ideal client wants to hear, no matter how much your market research told you it did. So
exactly.
Very cool. Okay. Well, Mariana, is there anything else that you want to touch on when it comes to content creation?
No, that's all.
Sounds like your baby is getting a little fussier. How can people connect more with you?
You can join my Facebook group. It's called Super Moms. I'll put the link in here, and my website, marianacruiz.com.
Cool. Yeah, put those links in there. And I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this stuff, because this is stuff that I don't think people, they don't hear, and they need to. We need to make this like a very simple, like, this is how business works. And, if you're not familiar with marketing, if you're not familiar with business, if you haven't been doing this, these are the things that people who are talking about making 6 figures are doing. It's not just like, oh, I created this course, I can show you how to do it too. It's, here's every system I use, and all of this ties in.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Mariana. And I appreciate, again, having you come on today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See ya.
Bye.